Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Motor Mouth and Wild Bill Winters. And we are along with Rick Curdy. And guys, this is going to be a fun broadcast, isn't it? As we get to all talk about the top 20 rivalries of all time in sports. So with that said, okay, no, we're not talking baseball, but the word lead off definitely is something that we're going to do. And that's you, Mr. Curdy. Start 20 all the way to numero uno.
Okay, well, you're talking about baseball, so I got, let's see,
your number 20 is?
Yeah, my number 20, well, actually, I have Canada versus Russia in hockey.
Okay, Bill.
All right. I have Oklahoma versus Texas, and the reason that how I did my list was basically longevity, okay, how hot the rivalry is, the quality of the play, more, leading towards pro, and how much it's ingrained in our consciousness. All right, so I took Oklahoma versus Texas because 25 of the last 66 games, 61 of them those since 1945, both those teams have been in the top 25. So I think that's a good one to start with.
All right, well, I'm going to start with Kentucky and Louisville. I'll tell you what.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, okay. Kentucky and Louisville. I remember years ago, these two teams couldn't go ahead and play basketball, but all of a sudden they were forced to meet in the NCAA tournament, and that rivalry became more of a reality anyways. And football, I don't know how much it really is, but it is what it is. So, okay, 19.
Okay, well, I'm going to go a different route, and I'm going to go with tennis. And I have Martina Navratilova versus Chris Everett. That was a great rivalry back in the days. They're both legends, going back and forth to win championships, and a very friendly rivalry. I think they're still good friends to this day. So I love the old Martina and Chris Everett heyday of women's tennis.
All right, Bill.
All right. I had the Maple Leafs versus the Montreal Canadiens. Since the British defeated Quebec in the Plains of Abraham in 1759, there's been serious tensions from the English and the French-speaking Canadians, and a feud that's been going on in the NHL that was created in 1917. But from 1944 to 1977, this rivalry really took off. The two teams have faced each other 15 times and faced off in 5 Stanley Cup finals during 34 years. And they've had some really, really bloodthirsty battles. So Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens are number 19.
All right, I'm going to go Florida State against Miami. Well, it's safe to say that they've had a great rivalry. I've actually seen some of their games, especially on the gridiron. So whether you have Howard Schnellenberger, Bobby Bowden, and how many games have been decided with field goals or missed field goals, I might add. So Florida State and Miami works for me.
Okay, well, I'm with Bill on one of them. I actually do have Oklahoma versus Texas, the Red River rivalry right there. It's a great rivalry, still a great rivalry to this day. And it's one of the best in college football. It's one of the best in football and all of sports. So Oklahoma and Texas.
And number 18?
Yes.
Number 18.
Okay, nice. There's going to be some cross-referencing here. It's just a question of how we feel as we move towards the top. All right, I had Arnold Palmer versus Jack Nicklaus. Okay, in 1962 U.S. Open with Jack Nicklaus, he overcame a 3-shot deficit to defeat Arnold Palmer to force a playoff, and had the fans going nuts. All right, and he beat Palmer 74-71 in overtime to put the viewers in awe. And they basically that's what basically made golf get recognized by a lot of people and had a tremendous impact. So when I did mine, that maybe it's not a longevity, but it had an unbelievable impact. So that had a lot to do with me rating this as high as I did. All right, so I have the Arnold Palmer versus Jack Nicklaus at 18.
Okay, Rick. Oh no, it's me. I'm going Dallas Cowboys versus Washington Redskins. That's what I yeah, Dallas and Washington. They've had some pretty interesting rivalries throughout the years, and dating back to George Allen and Tom Landry.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go stick with tennis, but on the men's side, and I'm going with Borg versus McEnroe. That was a great rivalry back in the day. McEnroe, Borg was like, Mr. French Open right there, and then McEnroe came, and it was just a great rivalry. And actually, that was Borg's last last match was against McEnroe at the U.S. Open. He retired at age 25. So those two are two of the greatest men's singles tennis players, and they had a terrific rivalry.
Okay,
nice.
Bill. You're up next.
Okay, I had the Boston Bruins versus the Montreal Canadiens. And this is, I went on longevity on this one. They're two historic franchises. They played more regular season games and playoffs combined than the other two teams in NHL history. NHL history, they have just pure disdain for each other is quite understandable. In postseason play, they've met a total of 170 games and faced off 8 times in Game 7 situation. All right, and it began in 1952 when Maurice the Rocket Richard scored a blood-dripping goal in 1952 Stanley Cup semifinals, winning goal against Sugar Jim Henry after returning to the bench following a concussion. I'm not a real big hockey guy, but I remember growing up, and I spent some time in Montreal, and I just knew that was an unbelievable rivalry. When I did a little homework on it, that made my list at number 17.
Okay, I'm going to Alabama versus Auburn. SEC rivalries. We all know how big football is in the state of Indiana. Alabama.
Yeah.
Wrong
Great
sport,
rivalry.
basketball, yeah. But Alabama versus Auburn, how many times have these teams cost each other an opportunity to win a national championship, the Iron Bowl?
Well, I'm going to stick with college football as well, and I got Miami versus Florida State. You know, those two are the big giants of football back then. You know, you got Bobby Bowden, and then he had Schnellenberger, and then he had Jimmy Johnson, and eventually Dennis Erickson, and going back and forth winning championships. And right now, yes, they're both a little down right now, but it's still a great rivalry in the state of Florida and overall in college football. So I like those two teams.
Well, I thought about that one because my 16 is Florida versus Florida State.
Okay.
All right, these two teams are in the same vicinity, but I like the longevity. Since 1994, these two teams have been going after each other, and a lot of times with national, implications. Miami and Florida State aren't even playing anymore, and I think that rivalry was really hot that fizzled out. So that's why I didn't put it on the list. But I do have Florida versus Florida State at number 16 because I live in the state of Florida. I did for a long, long time. I have friends that play for both teams, and that is ingrained in our consciousness, and I don't think it's ever going to go away. So that's why I took Florida State in Florida, and I have that at number 16.
And you know what? I'm going to go play golf with Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus at number 16 as well. I mean, when these two are, they put golf on the map. What else do I need to say? Arnold Palmer also made a good living after the fact. What was he? His commercials on the air, and Jack Nicklaus, all he did was design nightmarish golf courses, for which I was on one at the Bear in Traverse City, and I realized that after 9 holes we had to play best ball and go into teams. The Bear was a real bear in every sense of the word, Brett. These two guys put golf on the map. More power to them at 16. All right, number 15.
Scotty, a lot of people had that rated, a lot higher, just like you did. I thought about that, but it's an individual sport. But that's easily disagreeable because a lot of people would agree with you, Scott. That should have been ranked higher because of the impact.
Right. It's okay. It's on the top 20. That's good enough when you consider the magnitude of these rivalries. It's not a bad.
Yep.
It's definitely getting respect for sure. So now we go up to 15, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stick with golf, but I'm going to stick with a new generational rivalry, and I have Tiger Woods versus Phil Mickelson. Those two brought the best of each other. I think that's when Phil really started hitting his stride and everything. He went so long without winning a major and all that. And you're like, oh, poor Phil. And then he just went on a roll, and I think Tiger really brought golf to the excitement back almost to the Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer days. So I always thought that was a great rivalry. It was a fun little rivalry, and sometimes they would jab at each other, but I think most of all they had a lot of respect for each other and are good friends. So I like Tiger versus Phil Mickelson.
All right. Okay, we are at 15. I got Martina Navratilova versus Chris Evert. Okay, and I had to do a lot of thinking on this, because I spent a lot of time, evaluating how much talent, the impact, okay, and then longevity. And what won me over on this one was longevity. I mean, these women went at it for a long, long, long time.
Yep.
All right. Let's see. Navratilova led the series by a slim margin of 43-37. All right, and they battled each other 80 times over a 15-year rivalry, and that's what moved me, from tennis right into the top 15.
Okay, well, you know what, Bill? This is scary. At my number 15 is Chris Everett versus Martina Navratilova, too.
Wow.
How?
Great minds think alike.
Yeah, we did on that one, that's for sure. Chrissy Everett.
I came up with it first, though.
You did.
Well, yeah, but you got in lower ranks, and this is kind of funny. I see Rick's generation here.
Uh-huh.
I looked at Tiger Woods and Mickelson, and it didn't even register in my consciousness because I always think of Phil Mickelson as a stepchild. Okay, but when you really look into it, that's a 40-year-old generation sitting there going, hey, you know what? You need to re-examine your approach to Tiger Woods and Mickelson. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I just didn't have it as high a rank as you did, Rick.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I think we're pretty much on the same page with a lot of stuff.
Well, we will.
Oh, hell yeah. It's just how we have it ranked. I think it has a lot to do with how old we are.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's hard to believe, though.
You guys
Bill,
aren't even talking hockey here.
well, it's hard to believe, Bill. You and I actually matched it on 15 with Everett and Navratilova. But again, that rivalry was one of the most intense rivalries on the planet, too. So,
it was ridiculous.
It was, wasn't it? All right, so let's go to number 14.
Is that me?
Well, you're first, aren't
yes.
you?
Okay. Well, I do have the Redskins versus the Cowboys. I have that ranked up there. It's a great rivalry right there. Joe Gibbs and, you had Tom Landry, and they were both, great teams at that time. And, that division was really tough, and it was always battling it out. So I have those teams right there ranked.
Okay. Well, a lot of people would agree with you. I took a look at that, particularly since I started out with the Skins in '76 and remembered how much they hated the Dallas Cowboys with George Allen. I remember the first day he was there with his overhead projector. He was talking about the team we got to beat in the division. It's the Cowboys, and here's how we're going to do it. And he kind of felt that was the way to go to the Super Bowl. But I just think that relationship has fizzled out because the Redskins have been dog squeezed for the last 10 years or so. So I went with the Boston Bruins versus the Montreal Canadiens. Okay, again, two historic franchises. They've been around for a long time. They hate each other. In postseason play, they've played 170 games and faced off 8 times in Game 7 situations, which I thought was huge. Okay, so that's what I did there.
And I'm going with the Florida Gators and the Georgia Bulldogs. The Border War, 14.
Nice. Okay.
The old
Okay,
Gator
well,
Bowl.
I have Alabama versus Auburn. So I have that ranked a little higher than you, Scott. I like that rivalry, great rivalry, especially now with Nick Saban, and everyone's really into that rivalry. I mean, it's huge in Alabama. It's huge all over college football, and Auburn is and Alabama might be maybe not be the same anymore, but both of them are still good rivalries. They're fun, and people really get into it. And every time they face each other, no matter who's number one or who's not ranked, it's always a close game. It's always going to be some type of upset or some exciting ending like they had a couple years ago. So I like that rivalry.
All right, Bill, your number 13 is what?
No, 13, I'm sorry.
All right, that's what I said.
The Green Bay Packers versus Chicago Bears. All right, these are two long, prestigious clubs in NFL history. It really doesn't matter how bad the Bears are. If they beat Green Bay, people seem to back off on the fact they haven't been real good up until the last few years. They've got a combined 22 NFL championships, including 5 Super Bowls, and they got 48 members in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The engagement started in 1921, and it's the league's longest rivalry with 184 regular season games and postseason games. And Chicago leads the series 92-86 to 6. The Cheeseheads are naturally thirsting for blood every time they play in the NFC North. So I just thought that's a rivalry that's a little undervalued. It may pick up again, this year and next year because the Bears are starting to get back to be pretty good. But I just went with longevity on this one. That's why they have them so highly ranked at 13.
At 13, I'm going Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier.
Oh, wow. Okay, we got a violent disagreement on
That's
this.
a wild you too. Well, hey, listen, I got a history with boxing.
On this one.
Huh?
Okay, you can see the wildness on me and coming this one.
That's called a strong right hand. Listen, guys, I got a history of boxing with me. I've been punched out by James Toney, Sugar Ray Leonard, Muhammad Ali. Oy vey, and I'm still talking. So, well, yeah, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier is 13.
Well, I'm going to stick with boxing too, Scott, but I'm going to go with Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield. I said that became a terrific rivalry, back in the 90s when Tyson was in his prime, and then he lost his championship, and everybody thought, it's going to be Tyson versus Holyfield, and then Buster Douglas came and ruined that, and then Mike Tyson, of course, went to prison for a couple of years and came back, and everyone thought, oh, man, look at Mike. He looked leaner, meaner, and then when him and Holyfield fought finally, everybody thought it was going to be one-sided, that Holyfield would get destroyed, and Holyfield shocked the world, won the championship, and how can you forget about the second fight where he bit his ear off? So it's a classic fight, great rivalry, and actually I think they're pretty good friends right now. So I like that rivalry.
That's
with,
your number.
Holyfield and Tyson.
That's your number 12. Well, I hate to tell you this. Okay, I attended that. I attended the first Holyfield Tyson fight. I did pay-per-view on that, and when the ear got bitten, my ex-wife bit my head off for buying it for $50 for it. I mean, I love the first fight, but boy, that's what she was mad. And I said, well, come on, cut me a break, would you? I mean, it was a great first fight, but boy, that $50 stood out more to her, and I felt like I got my head bit off over that. So
Tyson got frustrated and didn't know what to do, so he just like, well, I guess I'll just bite his ear off. So. He beat him a couple times, actually.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm well aware of the fact that the tongue lashing I took later on. It almost your example of that kind of reminds me of Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard with the no mas when you think about how the second one worked out. So, but that's your number 12?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead, Bill.
All right. You guys undervalued some of these. I'm just going to tell you. But we'll look forward to talking about it as we move up the rankings. Anyway, I have Louisville versus Kentucky as number 12.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, they're bitter enemies in football, all right? They first played in 1912, and they played in basketball in 1913. These two programs may not be in the same conference, but every time they do battle, it's for Kentucky supremacy, the two biggest colleges in the state. All right, and Dick Vitale believes this is the third biggest rivalry in college sports, and it makes us true believers, baby. So I had Kentucky Wildcats and Louisville in the 12th spot. I just think that this is a rivalry that you guys undervalued a little bit.
All right, well, I'm going to throw another huge curveball at you guys. Okay, my number 12 is in the NHL, but you know what that is? Any original 6 teams that face each other.
Let me guess.
What?
Blackhawks and the Red Wings.
No. I'm actually taking a different direction. Any of the original 6 teams that face each other. Any of them.
Oh, well, you can't. Oh.
I make the rules.
You got to pin one down. You know how much I agonized over those? Scott, yeah, that's like number 20. I could have picked like 3 or 4 teams to start at number 20 with the college wins.
Well, you got to remember.
That doesn't work. You got to pick one.
No, I said any original 6 teams that face each other, and I'm the one person of you 3 here. I was born in a hockey town. I was born into all this stuff. The Red Wings and the New York Rangers mattered. The Red Wings and the Toronto Maple Leafs mattered. The Red Wings and the Montreal Canadiens mattered. The Bruins, you get the drill. Am I missing one? Probably. I don't know. But when you think about pardon me? You got the Red Wings. Huh?
You are?
Yeah, the Blackhawks.
You see, I that was the hardest part about slipping these hockey things into the top 20, and you're just generalizing it. Dude, that's I ain't buying it.
Well, you're buying this one because I said any original 6 teams that play each other.
Go back to Rick, let's go to. I think I'm just going to do the AFC versus the NFC.
Yeah, there you go.
Not quite.
The NFL versus the NFL.
No. Yeah,
I think National League versus American League. How's that?
Yeah,
that's all right. Well, anyways.
Come on, Scott, that's Bush League.
You got,
well, no, I call it frozen pond. Call it what you want. But I'm sticking to my story. NHL, any original 6 teams that face each other. So there, we're moving on to number 11. And don't forget, the Red Wings have more Stanley Cups than any American franchise in the NHL. So that kind of matters, too. The Toronto Maple Leafs have not even been to a Stanley Cup final, I think, since 1968.
Scott, when I was doing my list, I was thinking, going, one of the reasons why I concentrate so much on these NHL games is I know you're a big NHL guy.
Yeah.
Being from Detroit. I got to say, I'm a little disappointed you came across with it. You don't want to offend any of the 6 originals, and I'm going, boy, Scott's going to hammer me a little bit, and you did the exact opposite. You gave me a little rope-a-dope.
I did, didn't I? I'm good. I took it after my buddy Muhammad Ali. I'm taking any original 6 team that faces each other. Why do you think the NHL has on NBC rivalry right? How many times do you think they're going to feature these original 6? You get it? You get it? You get it. Okay.
Yeah, I get it.
All right.
But what you ain't getting, I'm going to say this to you. You can do that rope-a-dope, but I'm coming back after you with an overhand right in a little while. Watch out. I'm just telling you, based on what you already ranked something.
Yeah, okay. and then I'll give you a chill bill, and then you'll say, all right, let's call it a truce here. Okay, good stuff. So with that said, let's move on to number 11.
All right, I got Louisville, Kentucky. Great rivalry. Bill mentioned it earlier ago. Yep. Now, they hate each other, okay? I lived in Las Vegas, and I'd meet people from Kentucky, and I remember when Rick Pitino went to Louisville, and, it was like Benedict Arnold is going to the Cardinals. They absolutely hated him. Even though he won a championship in Kentucky, they hated when he went to Louisville. And now he'll be coming back, Rick Pitino, which will be interesting. So that's a great rivalry, and they hate each other, and it doesn't matter who's ranked or who's unranked. Every time they face each other, there's always some upset or somebody will beat them somewhere, or it's just a great rivalry, whether they're ranked or not ranked.
Scott, you're old. Hey, I want to commend you because that was very close to mine, so we're right in the ballpark there.
Okay.
But, hey, Scott, I got to ask you this, and Rick, who was the coach before Pitino at Louisville?
Tubby Smith.
No. Denny Crum.
Denny Crum, thank you. I'm getting old.
That's right.
I'm getting old with Dr. Duncanstein, so they were doing it way before Pitino got there. Okay, I just want to make that point. So thank you for Scott for that. But you're getting old when you can't remember Denny Crum. Okay, geez, all right. For number 11, I had the Detroit Red Wings versus the Chicago Blackhawks. All right, again, going along with Scott's model that these guys are his 6 original clubs. These 2 clubs have played in more regular season games than any other 2 clubs in NHL history.
Right.
They're the original 6 teams to the present. All right, and they've clawed and fought for everything. All right, and the Red Wings used to be really, really good. They've kind of fallen on hard times. All right, and then the Blackhawks are really, really good. All right, and then they've kind of fallen off on hard times. But that rivalry is so ingrained, okay, in the consciousness of people that watch hockey, that's why I gave it the rating that it did. Those 2 teams just despise each other, and I'm really kind of surprised, Scott. You're from Detroit. I thought that would be right in there, and that'd be one of the things you'd hit me over the head with, and you gave me the old rope-a-dope. Okay. I see how you are.
You've got to know me for a while. I do a lot of rope-a-dope, especially when I deal with a dope like you. Just teasing you. All right. It's all love, man. It's all love. Okay. So
yes, it is.
All right. So with that said, okay, my number 11 is actually Duke against North Carolina.
God damn, Scott. I can't wait to see his top 6, man. You're grading his papers really hard here. I have a feeling I know what he's going to hit us with, Rick, but I'll wait and see. Okay? All right. What number are we at?
We're at number 11.
10.
Well, that's right, 10 now.
10.
Okay.
11 or 10?
10. Right, I just finished 11. All right, go ahead, number 10.
Okay, we're number 10. I have USA versus Russia. That can't get any better than that. Remember the Miracle on Ice? Russia was this dominant force. It's kind of like remind me of Rocky versus Drago. The unstoppable Russians. The great Russians are never going to be stopped. And you got the underdog USA team, and went in there and just absolutely, to me, the greatest upset in all of sports was when USA defeated Russia in the Olympics. So and it became a great rivalry. And you see a lot of the Russian players in the NHL. We've got great American players in the NHL, and this has been a great rivalry. And it's just a miracle on ice. So I have USA versus Russia.
Okay. What about you, Bill?
Well, some people would say that's the most impactful event in pro sports.
Yeah, right.
But I didn't. Okay, I didn't even have it on my board.
I don't either.
But I can see that everybody's approaching this a different way. Okay, I had for mine number what is it? What are we at, number 10?
Yeah.
I have the Chicago Cubs versus the St. Louis Cardinals. This is referred to as the Route 66 series, now better known as the I-55 series.
Right.
The rivalry has been started in the late 1800s. Okay, while the Cubs may lead the all-time series with a record of 1,092 wins versus 1,049 losses through 2011, they pale in comparison to their soaring enemies in World Series wins. The Cardinals have 11, the Cubs have 2. All right, in 1989 and 2003, pennant chases were for the ages, but this is ingrained in the consciousness. I mean, I follow Major League Baseball, but everybody always looks at the box score when the Cardinals play the Cubs because they've just been there forever. Okay, and even though the Cubs never won a series, they kind of won the hearts of everybody. Everybody was really happy when they won, and St. Louis has always been probably one of the leading organizations in Major League Baseball. So that's why I selected that particular series at number 10.
All right, I'm going to go with Notre Dame versus USC.
Okay.
Notre Dame versus USC.
All right, that's a good one. Well,
why?
Why?
There you go.
Think of national championships, traditions, players produced, Heisman trophies, you name it. Great coaches.
Okay, I'm just going to say that USC hasn't been a factor in the last 10 years.
Well, I'm just talking about the overall
one of the things I
rivalry
looked at is how these things are fizzling out. But a lot of people felt that way too, Scott. When I looked at that game really hard, and I just had to make a decision, based on the fact that USC just hasn't been living up to snuff lately.
No,
that's just how I looked at how I did my board. So I can see, everybody has a different way of doing their board.
Well, for me, it's about tradition with those two. And here's the thing. When Notre Dame started playing games against the ACC and they had to eliminate some teams, they could have eliminated USC and they should have kept Michigan. And again, I don't have this as one of them. Michigan, Notre Dame would always be a good one. It's not on my list, though. But Notre Dame held on to USC as a rival. That's why I put it in there. Whether either team has been great for a while and how long it's been since the national championship, when you look at the history between those two, it's pretty good.
Scott, you're kind of breaking up a little bit.
All right. Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. The history through the years between Notre Dame and USC has been fantastic. So I look at the overall picture, not the most recent situation.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to tennis. I'm probably showing my age here, but I'm going with Serena Williams versus her sister, Venus Williams. I remember these two girls coming out from Compton, California, not too far where I grew up. And I remember Venus was going to be the next big star. And I remember the dad saying, well, watch out for her sister. Her sister's actually better. And it's probably proven, but they're both Hall of Famers. They're both pioneers. Great rivalries back and forth. It's fizzled out a little because Venus not the same player anymore, and Serena, even though she's been winning, she's been kind of maybe not as dominant as she was before. So, but it's still a great rivalry. They're pioneers of tennis. They're both number one Hall of Famers, and I like that rivalry between the two sisters.
Okay. We're at number 9. I had the USA beating Russia in the Olympics for hockey. I had a debate on this one a lot because it was only like a 2-week series, a month-long exhibition of hockey in the United States. But that win is probably the greatest win in pro sports. So that's why I had it rated as high as I did. So I had the Miracle Ice for number 9.
So you went the impactful event like Mr. Curdy, right? Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to stay in the city of L.A., but I'm going to Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers.
And you are greater. Okay.
I mean, what can you say about the Celtics and the Lakers? I'll lose my voice by the time we get done talking about them. You guys, we need me to stretch run here. So, Lakers, Celtics. Number 8.
All All right. Well, I got Ohio State versus Michigan. Probably one of the best.
Oh, man. Oh, now we're really going to get into it here. Okay. All right. I see. Okay. Go ahead, Rick. I want to hear this one.
Well, this is a great rivalry. I mean, I know Michigan, with Harbaugh, and he can't win the big games, and Ohio State's like one of the best college teams. But overall, it was just a great rivalry back then, and I know Bill, you're going to give me a hard time about it, but I know this is a tough list, But I went with Ohio State. I went with Ohio State and Michigan because of longevity, and it's just like ingrained in our minds when you hear about great college rivalries.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you and Scott on the longevity for most of my picks, but every once in a while, something just goes out of nowhere like a rocket, like the Russians and the U.S. and the U.S. winning the miracle. Okay, so I try to base most of mine on longevity and professionalism and length of the series and competitiveness over time. But every once in a while, one of those rings a bell. Okay, at number 8, I had Army versus Navy. Okay, there's no, and it's ingrained in our consciousness like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. There's no game more significant to the survival of American people than the Army-Navy battle that commenced in 1890. And Navy leads the all-time matchup with a 56-49-7 record. It's probably need to be updated a little bit, but it was the first appearance of instant replay in 1963. It makes this fierce competition even more historic. All right, I just think that, even though it's not a quality game like there is like Oklahoma and Texas and everything else, although Army is making a nice little comeback. They beat the University of Houston pretty badly the other last year, cost Major Applewhite his job. So I'm not so sure that they haven't started to realize how to adapt to play in major college football, but they're kind of limited in what they can do. But they've done a tone for themselves pretty well the last few years, so you don't know what's going on. But I had that series, ranked really high at number 8.
Well, I mean, now as Chris Berman would say, it's important for me to go to the NFC North Division, and he got that from the old North Division out in the NHL, and I got rest with Chris Berman, not dead, but I like the NFC North stereo or contact. With that said, I'm staying in the North with the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears, two great cities in the Midwest. We talk about the Detroit Red Wings and Chicago Blackhawks. Those two are almost like identical cities in terms of being great Midwestern towns and the longevity with a lot of the rivalries throughout. So Lions and the Bears, number 8.
Cool.
Wow.
Wow. I'm glad I can wow a few people. Wow. It's only getting more interesting as we go up the list.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I got for mine. I actually have Lakers versus Celtics. Can't get any more than that. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, doing their thing. Showtime. And just, going back and forth, winning championships. And what I love about it not only is the longevity, but the respect that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird had. Still friends to this day. It was just you had Showtime, and Boston was more like a blue-collar team. Just always scrapping out there. They had best players like McHale, Bird, Magic, Worthy. I mean, go on and on and on. It's one of the most iconic rivalries. And it's actually been rejuvenated now. Now you got Kemba Walker in Boston, who are doing really well. And, of course, the Lakers were doing very well until, what happened, and the season was suspended. But those two look like they're really tough teams this year, battling it out. So it's good to see that rivalry. Looks like it might be coming back. So I like the Lakers and Celtics.
Wow. You are showing your age, Rick, and I'm looking forward to, as we move up the ranks here, seeing the difference in our generations. I totally agree with you. But wow, you're a hard grader, my man. I can't wait to see what you've got in the top 5. All right, well, this is like trying to pick up the college playoffs, but we'll look forward to it.
Okay.
What were we gonna say?
No, I said some of the ones that you had lower. I thought, ooh, that's kind of low. I have them actually higher than that, but you'll find out.
Yes. All right. Well, we are at number 7, correct?
You bet.
Okay, I have Alabama versus Auburn at number 7. And the reason, again, is the longevity. The 1972 Iron Bowl, known as the Punt Bama Punt, where the Tigers trailing number 2 Alabama 16-3 and only a few minutes to play. They somehow blocked 2 punts and returned both of them for touchdowns to shock the opponent by a score of 17-16. Not only did it eliminate Bama's dreams of a national championship, but it left a terrible taste in everybody's mouth. Okay, there have been some other key plays, which I think, Rick already alluded to back when he was talking about it. But I think, again, this reason I ranked this one so high, okay, is the longevity. Okay, these two colleges really go at it, but have been going at it for a long time, even going back to the days of Bear Bryant. So that's why I had it ranked really high. It's up on my longevity scale pretty high. So I had Alabama versus Auburn, okay, in the 7th slot.
All right, Candy's about to take a microphone here in just a moment for my number 7. Okay, it's the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. Now, why is she going to take a microphone on this one and interject? First of all, when we first started dating, she was my photographer, and I got her on the field at Lambeau Field for the Lions and the Packers, and they were playing that game on national television for the division title. Number 2, we got married on that day 3 years ago. Number 3, on her birthday, and this pained me. Okay, Aaron Rodgers threw that Hail Mary, and I was saying, hell no. Don't worry, no explicit stuff with that one, okay? And then, of course, this last year they lost on my birthday, but let's not kid yourself. The Lions and the Packers, they always like to get this game on national TV, no matter how relevant the Lions are. And I remember at our wedding, the officiant said, now, you won't have a problem if the Lions lose to the Packers. Oh, no, we're used to it anyways. And I'm going to tell you, everybody was laughing anyway, so it doesn't matter. So, Candy and I, this is the rivalry that brought us together because I'm plenty of fish, okay? I sent her a note, and there's no reason why the Lions and the Packers can't be teammates. And lo and behold, we are teammates. So there. Lucky 7.
Gee, Rick, no bias on this one.
You think? You better make the boss happy here, man. What do you think, Candy?
Out of left field? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Candy, what do you have to say about it?
As much as I love the rivalry, I'm not sure it would be on my top 20. I'm just being honest with you. But I do love the rivalry.
Well, what can I tell you? It may not be on your list, but it's on mine, and it's deep on mine. Okay. Where did we get it? Deep. And I haven't had as much caffeine as I need to. So, all right, anyways, let's go up to number 6.
Okay.
Now we're starting to hit pay dirt, fellas.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, what do you got, Rick?
I have the Detroit Red Wings versus the Colorado Avalanche.
Oh, that's a good one,
okay.
too.
Oh, my God.
Again, I'm showing my age again. I mean, that was a great rivalry. Steve Yzerman, you had Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, and when the Nordiques went to Colorado and they became a great team, that was a great, fun rivalry back in my time. I loved it. I love to see Detroit coming back. And so hopefully they will. But I miss Scotty Bowman days. I miss those days. That was fun. And I'm not even really a big hockey fan. I enjoyed that rivalry. So that's what I have.
Yeah, I think you also had the goaltender fights as well. And the Claude Lemieux and all those brawls that ensued with it. Mike Vernon beating the daylights out of Patrick Waugh. Waugh getting into a fight with Chris Osgood. And some of the blood, sweat, and tears. I was actually in Denver and saw one of those games over at the old McNichols Arena. And the electricity there was unquestionably incredible. I didn't think you had it in you, Curdy, to actually come up with a hockey thing since you don't really know. All you ever talked about before was the Charlotte Checkers.
I did my research.
No kidding. You came up with that one, you did.
I wanted to go in a different direction. I said, I'm going to surprise Scott and do a lot of hockey here.
Well, I did it with my original 6 classification earlier. I just didn't individualize the games. I lumped them. But no, I got to tell you, that's a curveball that you could even come up with hockey, Curdy, but that's a good rivalry. No doubt about it. So.
Oh, I agree. There was a great rivalry, Rick. I know you wanted to take a turn, but just ran off the road and went into a ditch. Okay, I just don't agree with that one at all. Okay, I mean, the Colorado Rockies haven't been around long enough to even make a statement other than maybe the 8 or 9 years they were pretty good with Patrick Waugh, but they've kind of fizzled. And and that's so that when I plugged that in to my formula, I just saw no longevity, no heated rivalry. Yeah, it was good for a few years, and that was it. So Scotty's trying to manipulate his way through by being soft with the 6 original teams. I'm doing the hard work here, trying to analyze those 2 hockey games. I spent analyzing those relationships. And I looked at that series, and that's why I ruled it out. But a lot of people, I remember that series. It was awesome. So a lot of people would, agree with you, Rick. But I'm going to, because of my age, I'm going to, violently disagree with that one. Okay,
that's
but
cool.
yes, it is. That's why we're doing this show. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Listen up, you guys. Now we're starting to go down the pipe here.
Yep.
All right, so this is really interesting. And Scotty, I'm telling you, man, you're going to be sorry you did that rope-a-dope. I'm just telling you that right now. Okay, I'm going to go with the Dodgers and the Giants.
That's
all right, now
6.
there's a mutual dislike. There's a mutual dislike for these 2 franchises that began in the 19th century. That's 1890, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
All right, when both those clubs are in New York City.
Right.
Okay, then the Dodger owner meets Walter O'Malley, moves his team to Cali.
Right.
He convinced Giants owner Horace Stoneman to do the same in order to preserve the rivalry. All right, these NFL West teams each have the most National League pennants with 21 and 6 World Series titles. But there's plenty of broken apple big hearts, and I'm one of them along the way. And this rivalry is kind of sizzling off a little bit, but it's still right up in there because of the longevity. So I had the Dodgers versus the Giants at number 6.
All right, well, I'm going Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears. Think about it. The Super Bowl champ usually gets Thursday night, but not during the 100th year. It was the Packers and the Bears that got the national Thursday night game. You guys have stated the point quite clear. The Packers and the Bears, the oldest rivalry, and they're fairly even in the Super Bowl championships between them. So there's no question that that one belongs in my top 6 easily.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, so we're number 5 right now?
Number 5.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, well, you mentioned this rivalry earlier in the broadcast. I thought, that to me was kind of low, but my top 5 on this one was Jack Nicklaus versus Arnold Palmer. Those 2 are great rivalries, great friends, going back and forth. Those guys made golf what it is today. Those were like the 2 like rock stars of golf, and great rivalry, just going back and forth, who's winning championships, and it was a lot of fun. And they were just like just big rock stars. It was like the Beatles versus Elvis, pretty much. So those 2 were the stars of golf at that time, and it was just a friendly, great rivalry, and they're both great champions. So I like Jack Nicklaus versus Arnold Palmer.
Okay, what's your number 5?
I don't disagree with you there. There's a lot of people who feel that way, Rick. I just don't, because it's an individual sport, and I think they went at it for a decade or so. But the thing that you got going for you is it really hit the Richter scale as far as impact. It's right up there with sort of golf as a major consciousness. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that you've got to rank that high. But I just I'm thinking as we go in the top 5 or 6. That there's rivalries that have been longer, that are a little more team-oriented in this case. But there were a lot of people that would agree with you, Rick. Trust me on that one, because I had to make a decision on that one myself, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. It just didn't hit my criteria.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'm gonna go with North Carolina versus Duke. All right, Dean Smith, Coach K, Jordan Hill, Tobacco Road, Cameron Crazies. The fans are passionate. The teams are successful. The games are almost down to the buzzer. They played forever, and it's almost 50-50 who's won the games. 2 of the 4 winningest teams in history, going at it twice a year, and once won the ACC tournament if we're lucky. And this is what college hoops is all about, and that's why I gave it as high a ranking as I did. It's not pro, okay, but it's as close to pro as possible because of the number of pros that they produced off those 2 programs. So that's why I had it rated number 5.
All right, well, I'll throw another curveball at you, and this one there is a pun intended, okay? Ready? I'm actually going to stay with the Detroit Tigers and New York Yankees, believe it or not. Even though they don't face each other as much, okay, the history between these 2 franchises goes so far back. Now, Tigers knocked out the Yankees to get to the World Series in the 2000s. But when you think about the great players and the fact that they used to be divisional rivals is one, but think of the Hall of Famers that went through both those franchises. You have Al Kaline, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, Charlie Gehringer, Ty Cobb, and yet Ty Cobb was the first one inducted into the Hall of Fame. And and then Babe Ruth followed. The great history of the players, to me, it's hard to leave that one out. Even though they don't face each other as much, they're still one of the original rivalries in Major League Baseball. They really are. Pinstripes versus the old English D. Look at count the Hall of Famers between the two. You've got a lot of them.
Okay, well, at number 4, I actually have Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. Probably
ding. Good slot. Good pick, Rick. Go ahead.
That to me, again, like Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer, those guys were like rock stars of their time, in their prime. I remember when Muhammad Ali was a champion and all that stuff, and then he lost his title, and then Joe Frazier was the champion, and people were like, oh, he's really not the champion, they need a fight, and Joe Frazier beat Muhammad Ali, knocked him down. So that was a great rivalry, and I mean, the jabbing, especially with Muhammad Ali, was just classic. So, I mean, that's just ingrained in our memory, and to me, that's how I got into boxing, was when I saw Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier fight, and just really got into it, and it just continued on. So that to me would be my number 4 pick, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier.
Well, good job, because that's mine as well.
Ooh.
So, Scott, we are tied now, okay?
Okay.
I agonized over this one for a big one, because there are a lot of people who think it should have been number 1.
Right.
Okay, but I had to factor in longevity. How much is it built into our consciousness?
Right.
Both then and now. And they fought 3 times with 2 of the biggest brawls considered among the greatest fights in history.
Right.
And many say their first fight in Madison Square Garden in 1971, it was the most significant boxing match in history. I totally agree with that. When they met, looked at, Rick, how much it made an impact on him. When they met for the 3rd time in 1975, the Thrill in Manila, Ali verbally assaulted Frazier to such a degree that the months leading up to the fight that Frazier remains psychologically damaged to this day regarding that. And I think this is the beginning of the media, an athlete being such a powerful person that he's able to buck the military. That's why Deion Sanders was, the other day, that really got under Scott's skin. That this is a guy that had so much talent. He was able to overcome everything, all right, because he was just a tremendous talent. There's so few guys like that. They're generational, all right, and so that's why I had it in the 4th slot, okay, and the only reason I didn't have it ranked higher was that, it didn't have, the longevity wasn't there, okay, but the fights were unbelievable, and I wouldn't have a disagreement with it being ranked number 1, but I had to sit and agonize over this, so I made it number 4.
Well, my number 4 is...
So, now, hold on, Scott.
Okay, no problem.
This is, you gave me the rope-a-dope on this one. I cannot believe that you had that fight ranked as low as you did. That's when you did that. That's why I'm saying I'm going to come back and blast you, because I think both Rick and I had it right, and you're just off in left field somewhere. Okay? I mean, that fight was really, really a dramatic fight, and we both have it ranked the same. So, what's up with you? Can you please explain to me why you ranked that fight so low?
To me, it was just a matter of putting them in the top 20, whether I wanted to put them in order or not as they were coming to my mind. As long as they made my top 20, that's all that mattered to me. It's really is when I put my list together.
All right, so
I'm thinking of them on the fly. Well, you got. Well, here, hold it. Okay. Chill, Bill. Okay, I got to give you a chill, Bill, because Curdy doesn't know what it means, anyways. Okay. So, but anyways, one of the things I was doing is, even though I could have ranked certain things higher, unlike a guy like you that has to research it, I just come off the top of my head and put them on paper, and that's about it. So that's why I came up to the conclusion I did. Do I think it's a top? I mean, when you're compiling a top 20 list of everything that's happened in the sports world for decades and centuries, and think about it, that's a long history. And to be able to narrow it down this, and when we have our honorable mentions, there'll probably be more curveballs as well. So, so that it was ranked where I needed it to be. It made the list. Fair enough, Mr. Rope-a-dope?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I got it.
Okay.
I just understand your criteria that it just popped in your head and it meant the most to you. Yeah, I understand that, and you're fairly accurate, too. You know, but some of the experts just sit back and go, "What, are you crazy?" But I can see.
Well, I've already been told crazy so many times. My wife calls me a crazy man, so I've heard that too. But anyways, my number 4, with that said, is the St. Louis Cardinals and the Chicago Cubs. I mean, you know, it is. The Cardinals and the Cubs are what they are. I mean, and here's another irony when you think about the relationship between the two cities. Once upon a time, the Chicago Cardinals moved to become the St. Louis Cardinals in football. How about that? Doesn't relate to this.
Say that again?
Once upon a time, the Cardinals were located in Chicago, and then they moved to St. Louis. There's some interesting...
That was the football team.
Right, I know, but I'm just telling you, where you talk about St. Louis and Chicago, the irony there, you know, but St. Louis, Chicago, ... Okay. But the Cardinals and the Cubs, to me, are, you know, even though the Cubs have only had 2 world championships in their incredibly crazy history, and the Cardinals, like you say, Bill, are one of the best franchises in baseball. But yet, the rivalry and the proximity between the two cities, it goes without saying. So, yeah, but I have no problem putting the Cardinals and the Cubs in my number 4 spot.
A lot of people would agree with you, Scott.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great one.
So, number 3, Mr. Curry.
I got Packers and Bears.
Okay.
Those 2 are great rivalries, legendary. Lambeau Field, Soldier Field, probably 2 of the most iconic stadiums in all sports. Bears are, you know, they were kind of a little disappointment, but last season they did really well. Packers, you know, starting to do well now, but you just can't forget, you know, the Ken Starr and you know, it's just iconic rivalry. You know, George Halas and all that. So to me, it's just one of those ones that are again ingrained in your memory. When you hear about NFL and you talk about great rivalries, I think right away people always talk about Packers and Bears as one of the best rivalries in all of professional football. So I'm going with that as number 3.
Nice. I had the Red Sox versus the Yankees. All right, and this is a tough one to find the 3 slot. I'm just going to go again on longevity. Some say that this is merely a media creation, and it's somewhat true. But these 2 teams have rarely battled head-to-head for the pennant. But remember this, the Red Sox were the American League's dominant franchise until selling Babe Ruth to the Yankees.
Right.
A lot of people forget that. Then the Red Sox fans have yet to fully recover from it. Okay, then the rivalry has been DiMaggio versus Williams, Mookie blank bleeping Dent home run, Roger Clemens returned to Fenway. Okay, and then history ever since then, you know, it's just, and then when the Boston won Game 7, so there's a tremendous history there. So that's why I had it ranked number 3. Okay, with my rankings.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what, Bill? Rick, I'm going with the Dodgers and the Giants.
Okay.
2 former New York teams that went out west and continued the rivalry on the West Coast. I mean, how can you not put that in that list?
Yeah, they hate each other.
Oh, for sure.
And they hate each other. Until we made Rick Curdy a nice guy, he doesn't rant anymore. Now we all like each other, but no, the Dodgers and the Giants. There's no love lost between those 2 teams.
Yeah, I also think as a kid you probably read more West Coast newspapers. I forget where I grew up in New Jersey. There's a little bit of a regional bias here, too. I think it's kind of interesting, in addition to the age.
Right.
Interesting.
Okay.
Well, my number 2, this was a tough one, but I actually went with Red Sox and Yankees. I think it all started with probably the worst trade in professional sports with Babe Ruth, you know, going to the Yankees, and, you know, the Yankees winning all these pennants, and then, of course, the poor Red Sox took them over 80 years and finally won another World Series to get rid of the Babe Ruth curse. It's just legendary, and now the Red Sox have won championships recently, so I think that it brings more heat to that rivalry, and they're both great teams right now, and we'll see what happens later on in the season or in the future, but that's just an iconic rivalry. When you talk about, you know, hated rivalries and heated rivalries, I always think of the Yankees and Red Sox, and it all started with the horrible Babe Ruth trade to the Yankees.
Yeah, you and I are pretty close, Rick. Give or take a position or two. All right. So it's kind of interesting. All right, at number 2, I had the Celtics and the Lakers. And again, the longevity was the major thing, the quality of play, all right, and also just the impact on social consciousness. All right, and remember, there were only 9 NBA teams for most of the 1960s, meaning Chamberlain and Russell squared off 9 to 12 times per season. And since defenses weren't as sophisticated as they were now, all right, these two battled, and it was often without weak side help or double teaming. So, of course, Russell's Celtics always won, which helped build Russell's reputation. It depicted Chamberlain as a selfish player who didn't take his teammates, make his teammates better. For example, in 1961-62, Wilt averaged 50.4 points a game, but the Celtics beat the Philadelphia Warriors 8 out of 10, 12 games. The next season, Wilt averaged 44.8 points per game, but the Celtics beat Chamberlain's San Francisco Warriors 8 out of 9. So who was more valuable? It's what made this rivalry a classic. Now, everybody knows about Bird and Magic and jump-starting the NBA because Magic went to the Lakers and Larry Bird went to the Celtics. So I don't think that we need to educate our public, our audience on that. It's just putting a cherry on the fact that this is why this thing should be ranked so high at number 2.
Okay, well, you know what, Rick? You and I are dead even on this one, Yankees and the Red Sox. I'll utilize everything you said, and don't forget the fact that they spend the most money, so they can get anybody they want. They have endless pocketbooks. So you want a pennant, you can buy it. It doesn't matter. You want to make a bold trade, you want to deplete a farm system, they'll do it. Although the Yankees got smarter over the years, especially after George Steinbrenner left, because they began to develop from within. But, George bought pennants, and more power to him. And how do you knock 28 world championships? It's pretty good. And the hatred between the two. So, and yeah, of course, a Babe Ruth trade certainly added to it. So my number 2 is definitely the Yankees and the Red Sox, without a doubt.
All right. Well, here's my number.
All right, hold on, Rick.
Okay.
I want to do a rope-a-dope here. I want us to go in reverse order. Why don't you lead off, Scott, with who you have as ranked number 1?
No problem. I'm Michigan, Ohio State.
Same here. What about you, Rick?
Well, I'm kind of disappointed in your list, guys, later on, because to me, this is the greatest rivalry in all of sports. And Dick Vitale said it was the greatest rivalry in basketball. And it's iconic. And I live in this state, so I'm not trying to be a homer. It's got to be Tar Heels and Duke. That is an iconic rivalry in all of sports, whether it's professional or college. These two hate each other because I live here and I got to hear the Duke people and I got to hear the Tar Heel people every day. And it doesn't matter who's ranked, who's number 1, who is unranked. Every time these two face each other, it's always a legendary, down to the wire battle. And I mean, it is just absolutely iconic. They're only like 6 miles apart from Durham and Chapel Hill. And, you got, Dean Smith and Mike Krzyzewski and Roy Williams. And, I mean, it just, the coaches, it just goes on and on and on. To me, Duke and Tar Heels is the greatest rivalry in all of sports.
Well, that's okay. When Candy and I were up in North Carolina, we went to both campuses. They were both great campuses. So, yes, you are a homer. No big deal. So, but you know what? But how many times can I be accused of being up?
It ain't my fault I live in it.
But you know what, though? In all fairness, guys, I could say I'm a homer with the amount of Detroit references I put in there, so I'm not afraid to admit it. So now, with that said, Rick, everybody's got a homer. We all have a reason. So let's have a little bit of fun with this whole thing now. Let's talk about some honorable mentions. Name 5 or 10 that you can just ramble off, and then we can have some fun before we close out the broadcast. Okay? So, Rick, just name. You don't have to give explanations. You can give lists if you want to. That's okay. Do you have any honorable? Knowing you when I tried the Mount Rushmore thing before with Peter Ween, I remember when we talked about Mount Rushmore, I said 4, and you kept trying to find ways to put 5 in there. So you were going to buck the system then. So buck it now and add a few more since we only limited it to 20.
Oh, well, I had Dodgers and Giants. That was up there with it was a debate with them or the Red Sox and Yankees.
But I'm talking about honorable mentions now. Other ones. Did you ever come up with some additional ones that you debated?
No, the Dodgers and Giants.
Okay.
But you had that in there, didn't you? Had you one in your top 20, Rick?
Oh, you know what? I did. I'm sorry. You know what? So many great, iconic ones. I would probably go with Cubs and Cardinals. You know, that was a tough one. You know, Stan Musial. And again, like the Cubs, you know, they won 2 championships where the Cardinals had so many. They have the second most World Series next to the Yankees. So that's why I left it off my list, because the Cubs haven't been as great as the Cardinals were, but it's still a great, fun rivalry. So that was one that I kind of debated on, but the reason I left it off is because the Cubs are not there with championships, and it took them, over 100 years to win their second one. So that's why I left that one off my list.
Any other ones?
I don't know. I mean, it's tough. I can't think of any right now off the top of my head.
Well, don't worry about it. So, all right, winners, what other ones you got?
All right, I got a bunch of them.
I do too.
All right, first of all, the Raiders and Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
The only reason it didn't make my board, well, you know, we don't have to really talk about it. It didn't make my board because the Oakland Raiders haven't been relevant for very long.
Right.
Neither was Kansas City up until they won the Super Bowl. Here's now, out of my Ivy League, I'm going to go Harvard-Yale. That's the oldest rivalry in college football.
Right.
And it's still a great game. It just doesn't get a lot of press, and the caliber of play isn't as good as Duke and North Carolina. But, when I was in college, we actually beat those guys and finished 4th in the nation. So, come on up and play us up north, as we like to say. The Redskins and the Cowboys, I just don't think either team's been relevant. They were pretty hot there in the 70s and 80s for a while. And USC and UCLA, they didn't make my board because USC's fallen off on hard times. And UCLA, that's all economics. They can't get the athletes to go there anymore. Right. And then UConn women versus the Tennessee Volunteers. That was another one that was tough to leave off the board. I don't like to discriminate against women. Pat Summitt and Gino Ariema. Those are always great games, but, you have to look at the longevity factor and the quality of play. So, I put Christy Everett in there because I thought her, that's why I did what I did there. But it was tough to leave that off. And then the AFC versus the NFC. Okay, I'm going to go the way you did, Scott. Go back to the rope-a-dope.
No problem.
I can honestly see why, 6 hockey teams, it's really tough to choose. So I can see where you went. I just went AFC, NFC, and then started with Kansas City and Oakland. I had to figure it out how to fit through time. But also how much these things have laid into our social consciousness.
Right.
Okay, I mean, the thing on my list, and I think most of the ones on your list, depending 1 or 2, are so ingrained in our consciousness now that a lot of it's personal and how high you rate it. So that was mine. That's my list, Scott. Can't wait to hear yours.
Oh, I bet you can. All right.
Does Andre the Giant Hulk Hogan count?
Well, since you didn't have many other ones, we'll let you put it in there. That's okay.
Well, I want to say this to you. There's a little bit of bias on both our parts because, I don't know enough about soccer. When you look at Real Madrid versus, what is it? The other FC, whatever, Barcelona or whatever, some people would sit back and go, we're kind of limited to our perspective. There's a couple of sporting events that were pretty large, like, for example, rugby, Australia versus New Zealand. So people would have that, in their top 5. Okay, so a lot of it has to do where we grew up. I just wanted to throw that in there.
All right, so you ready to hear my off-the-wall list? Okay?
Yes.
Well, actually, I did have Harvard versus Yale on that list, the honorable mentions, okay? Oldest rivalry. Another one that nobody's ever heard of are my cats, Bucky and Boots.
Huh?
What?
My cat, Bucky and Boots. I got a tuxedo.
His cat.
I got 2 cats. I got a tabby cat, brown and black, against a tuxedo cat. Hold on.
You've been isolated too long.
Oh, I know. Quarantine does it.
Take him for a walk, Candy. Candy, take him for a walk around the neighborhood. Get him some air.
Yeah, so let me explain let me give you the rationality behind this. Okay, hold on, guys. Hear me out. Boots here is an adorable tuxedo black and white cat, and Bucky, when they go on their perch, they get the best stare downs I have ever seen in a boxing ring. I mean, the Tabby it's brown and black, who's got such power pulse, he can smack the daylights out of this tuxedo cat. And the
Joe Scott.
No way. I may even turn it red before this is over, like my Hawaiian Punch. But Bucky and Boots, to me, make Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, they give them a run for their money. I just need to get a few videos to prove my point. So Bucky and Boots, a tuxedo, black and white cat against a tabby, brown and black cat works for me. Now, getting a little bit more serious about that, since I had to get my two creatures in there. Okay, yeah, Texas Longhorns against Oklahoma, UCLA versus USC, John McEnroe versus Bjorn Borg, McEnroe versus Connors, Cal Berkeley versus Stanford. I would love to see Kentucky and UCLA meet, and North Carolina, Kentucky. And if you want some Sunshine State love, how about Florida and Florida State? So, and Army Navy.
How about the Knicks and the Miami Heat?
What's that?
How about the Knicks and the Miami Heat?
Is that NBA a league? I forgot. I thought the league that you're referring to is the NDL, called the National Drama League. I didn't know that league was around. I don't know.
I'm going to tell Patrick. You said that in D-Wade, okay?
Well, I don't care. Say whatever you want.
Drama.
I don't care. Hey, listen, I love Patrick.
Before it became drama.
Let me tell you.
Remember who the coach was over there?
I love Patrick Ewing. I saw this guy in the 1982 Final Four in New Orleans against North Carolina. I was at that game. So.
Yeah, Scott, I agree with you, but back then they played ball. They didn't really deal with all the drama that they do now in the NBA. But so that's why I kind of like the Knicks and the Heat.
Well, the only reason I even bothered to even put one team in there is how the heck do you leave the Lakers and the Celtics off? You can't. I love the Lakers and Celtics. I mean, back in the day when the Pistons were during the Bad Boys era, you could make a case of the Pistons and the Celtics for a while. They had some pretty nice.
Actually, the Pistons and the Bulls.
Yeah, them too.
I looked at that one. That was another one, and I had to look at how relevant both franchises have been over time. That's why I didn't make the list, but that was a humdinger.
Well, I went to a lot of
great rivalries.
I went to a lot of those games back in the day when I was living in Detroit.
Great. I miss Lane Beer. Oh man, I love Lane Beer.
I hated Bill Lambier. I got a great story. I got to tell you a great story about Bill Lambier. I'm at the Boston Garden with the Pistons and the Celtics, and I wanted to talk to Dennis Rodman, and Bill Lambier opened his big mouth. And I said, listen, Bill, let me give you some information, man. Okay, just because you got enough to pay your stupid car payment doesn't mean I got enough to pay mine. And let me tell you, Dennis Rodman went ahead and told him to shut the you-know-what up. I said, get off his back. And then Dennis gave me all the time I needed. And I had my favorites in that Pistons locker room. So Bill Lambier, and I'll tell you what, the way he treated people was a major reason why he never got a head coaching job in the NBA, because he burned a lot of bridges. Trust me, that's why he ended up in the WNBA. He only had one assistant job. But, you think about those rivalries back in the NBA when it really mattered, then, yeah, but not nowadays. The Lakers and the Celtics, I'd watch them. I would. I mean, I would certainly love to see a new one develop over time with the Bucks and the Lakers, but the Bucks would have to show me a lot more to even get any kind of consideration. So,
yeah, that's right up there with the Cleveland Browns versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I looked at that one. The only problem is, ever since the Browns moved to the Ravens, to Baltimore, I really wanted to put the Ravens and the Steelers in there, but because they moved that franchise, that screwed up both rivalries.
Absolutely.
As far as I'm concerned. But yeah. So, I mean, that's right up in there, the one you're talking about.
Yeah, well, you know what, guys, we always have a lot of fun with these lists. Since we're in the wonderful world of trying to find things to talk about, I'm going to get more creative, and we're going to try to come up with some more lists here to make it real. Now, obviously, I promise I won't incorporate Bucky and Boots into the next one since we got that one out of the way. But
you promise?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're talking rivalries.
I don't believe you.
Well, I got to keep it real. Candy, what do you want to say?
I want to mention.
Huh?
Can I mention them? I have another mention. How about the New York Giants versus the Brooklyn Dodgers?
Yep.
Well, you know what? That's a good one. New York.
Yeah, the only problem with that one, Rick, is they kind of, they went both West Coast, so the Dodgers and the Giants kind of covered that one. I know I'm old, but we're not that old. Scott and I aren't that old.
Yeah, well, the one thing I tried
I'm
to
not as old
avoid.
as Babe Ruth yet. Huh?
The one thing I tried to avoid was too many in-state rivalries, even though a few got thrown in there. I mean, because everybody, depending on where you're geographically set up, I can tell you Michigan State's high up there, and it does get ugly. But then you can also make a case for Wisconsin and Minnesota as well. They play for some trophy too, don't they, Candy?
Yeah, the Paul Bunyan X.
So, I mean, every area has their rivalries and so forth, but, it's just worth talking about them. But you know what, guys, so the 20 that we had, I thought each of us had 20 great ones. Candy, go ahead.
You could also talk about the rivalry between Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. Because that's actually still going. It's been going 16 years.
Yep, they've been going back.
Bingo, right between the eyes. Yeah, good one, Candy.
Yeah, I didn't think about that one.
Hey, you know what? I got to tell you, you have boxing and tennis as individual sports, let alone golf. But what about some NASCAR stuff? What about Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt?
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt for a while. Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart. What about the Indy 500 where you had Al Unser against a lot of the field? Mario Andretti. I mean, auto racing doesn't get a lot of respect, but trust me, the rivalries that you have and the history that you have in motorsports is really underrated compared to what we obviously talk about. But, you have Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, David Pearson back in the past. I mean, those sports have a great history of their own. They really do.
Andretti versus Foyt.
Yeah.
Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's just another one that we haven't really put on the list. All right, how about this guy Thorpe versus Michael Phelps?
Right.
All right, and swimming. All right, that was one that was kind of left off the board. These are really tough decisions. All right, and this is another one. This guy Sebastian Coe versus Steve Ovett. All right, in the middle distance running in the 1980s in the Olympics. A lot of this is just exposure. That's why some of these things aren't in our consciousness as much as they should, but the efforts are right up there and should be in the top 10 as far as individual efforts.
Well,
there's a lot of great rivalries out there we didn't cover.
Yeah, you want to talk about Ben Johnson versus Carl Lewis before Ben got doped up?
Ben Johnson, as they called him.
Right, no, I'm just saying. I mean,
it was a great rivalry. I remember that.
And then I don't even take cycling because they're all doped up anyway, so it doesn't matter to me. I call it the Tour de Fraud, not the Tour de France, but go figure. But we really covered a lot of good ones, and I think it's been great that we look at the different generations of what we've done. I would love to sit here and tell you USA versus Russia, Canada versus Russia in hockey, but I'm talking about sustainability over the years, constant. I can only imagine, a UCLA, Kentucky, North Carolina, Kentucky. Those are unbelievable rivalries in basketball. It's just too bad we can't see enough of them, except in the NCAA tournament or some of the preseason games. Because nowadays, and what about Michigan State? I mean, how many rivalries do they have in basketball with Tom Izzo?
It's in there.
Yeah, the Spartans will play anybody. They don't even care.
They have a regional thing because they don't televise it as much.
Well, right.
Normal.
No, I know. I
Coast doesn't get it.
So, any closing thoughts before we get to promote one another? All right.
I think it's great. I think they're all great lists. So
yeah, you know what?
Different, but consistent as well.
It's been a lot of fun, without a doubt. So we'll look forward to doing this. All three of us will be back at it next Wednesday. If you guys are game for it, it's always a lot of fun. We're having a blast. So with that said, okay, Rick, lead off and promote what you're looking to do.
Well, I'm the founder and CEO of the Charlotte Bats. Our website is www.charlottebats.com. Our email address is cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com. You can contact me there. I'm also on Twitter at Charlotte Bats or at Rick Curdy. And I'm also on Instagram at Charlotte Bats. And you can follow our pages on Facebook at Charlotte Bats Baseball or our group page, Charlotte MLB.
Go ahead, Bill.
You can follow me on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/Bill Winters 55. I'd love for you to subscribe as we're going to be putting our podcast eventually on my YouTube channel. And you'll see some videos of games that I played in. Some of these are ESPN classics. You can go to my website, billwinters.biz, where you'll see. I'd love for you to buy my book and have a ship out to the house. It's a good little read for under $20. And you can also contact me there via email inside that website. And then you can go to Instagram at bwinters55. I've been posting some videos on Instagram the last couple of days because I've been bored out of my mind, and I'm trying to get people to take a look at pro football back in the 70s and 80s. So I'm having some fun with that. Then you can reach me on Twitter, Bill_Winters55. And we'd love to hear from you, and that's it.
And don't forget to promote our broadcast, right, Bill?
Yes, on podcast, our show. If I was going to let you do that, Scott.
No.
But that's okay. Motormouth, 2 words, and Wild Bill Winters. And you can reach us on iHeart, Apple, or Spotify. And take a look at our volume of shows. I think we put 24 in the can so far. And so you've got some nice little shows to listen to if you go to Spotify or any of those search engines on podcasts and listen to our show and get up to speed.
Well, tonight will be 25. All right, with that said, okay, I'll close out the broadcast by saying that you can find me on me personally on Twitter, Scoop with 5 3s. Then you also have at Tribune South. I have a Facebook page for the South Florida Tribune. Please like it, and then you'll get all the updates, a lot of information. Go to the South Florida Tribune, www.southfloridatribune.com. You'll be able to find all the additional contributors, all the content from the media distribution partners to our columnists, in addition to the broadcast on there. We also have a Instagram page, South Florida Tribune as well. So between Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course the actual website itself, we continue to work very diligent to do it. And I can't tell you what, the website would be nothing without the efforts of Candy Ebling, who, in my opinion, does an unbelievable job. As Dickie V would say, awesome, baby! And she does. She's the glue that keeps this operation together. So plenty of ways to get a hold of us. But meanwhile, on behalf of Rick Curdy, Bill Winters, my name is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City Madmouth, wishing you a good evening, and we'll go back at it tomorrow on the Sports Exchange here on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. Good night, everybody.